After a long, deep, gasping breath, the world came rushing in, spinning like a whirlpool. My senses returned to me all at once, and I felt like I was going to throw up. My mouth was even drier than the Sahara, and my tongue was so swollen I could choke in any minute. A dark, earthy, and metallic smell flooded my nostrils. The sensation of little ticklish pricks of grass on my hands and specks of dirt under my fingernails registered to my brain. I had felt a small breeze blow past me and I shivered. This is when I realized I had my clothes on. I had a light gray hoodie with what looked like a school name on it, dark, ripped blue jeans, and black and white Converse that caked in mud. They were torn and they were covered in dark brown stains all over. I stood up and looked around. I was in a ditch by the side of a dirt road, surrounded by never-ending tall green stalks of corn. Speaking of who am I? I hadn't remembered anything except for what had occurred in the mere moments I'd been awake. Another swift breeze blew through, and I figured I needed to find shelter. It looked like the corn stretched for 1,000,000 miles in all directions. So I just picked a direction and started walking alongside the road. It was pitch black, but the cacophony of stars were out, which illuminated the plain landscape enough for me to see where I was going. I walked for a long time. At least I thought it was. But I couldn't help but feel strange. It felt like I shouldn't have been able to walk for as long as I had. I tried to wrap my brain around the weird feelings I was having, but I couldn't remember anything. I didn't have the slightest inkling of who or where I was. Did I have family looking for me? Why was I out here? I knew common things, like what language I spoke and the year, but I couldn't remember things about myself or about my life. The only thing I could piece together was that I had long black curly hair, or at least the tips were black, because I could only see out of my peripheral vision. My thoughts were interrupted when a sweet yet savory smell wafted through the air right past my heart and into my stomach. Somehow I managed to drool a little, even though my mouth craved hydration. I also noticed lights about 60 feet away, my stomach rumbling louder as the sweet scent intensified. The porch light was on, which I knew meant somebody was home, and the familiar and comforting smell solidified the fact. But I even knew my appearance would irk most people, and I didn't know how the person or people in the house would react. However, the need for water and food was starting to take over my thoughts. I quietly walked onto the wraparound porch and peeked into the window by the door. There was a white but very thin curtain over the window, so I could still kind of see in. But it wasn't totally clear, but it was enough. My stomach grumbled once again, and I knocked on the door lightly. My thoughts began racing as I waited to see if someone would open the door. Even though the feeling of my heart slam dunking itself into my chest and my palms becoming clammy was uncomfortable, it felt familiar, which was a little comforting. The sun-bleached red door suddenly opened and I was met face to face with a boy. He was about a foot taller than me and had some short sandy brown hair with a light green and a hint of hazelnut eyes. He had a small beauty mark just above the left side of his pink upper lips. I stared at him as my mind drew a blank. He was wearing a pink apron, and underneath was a black t-shirt and light jeans. At first he looked confused, but it quickly turned to a mixture of panic and sympathy. May I help you?" he stuttered out. I could tell he was put off by me, but another burst of sweetness filled the air. I felt my mouth water with the little bit of moisture that was in there. Another loud growl escaped from the depths of my empty stomach. "Food," I said quietly. I looked down, suddenly overcome with embarrassment. The boy opened the door a little wider. Come in. I'm making some cornbread. He led me to the round table with the red, almost pink and white tablecloth. It was made with spruce and was on the lighter side. I sat down on the comfortable chair, my body finally taking in how exhausted it was. Mid-admiration of the table and surprisingly open layout of the kitchen connected the dining room. I jumped when a glass of water was suddenly placed in front of me. I looked up frantically at the boy. So, sorry, he muttered. It finally registered what was in front of me, and I swiped the glass off the table and started gulping the delicious water inside. I was done in seconds, and the boy went and got me 2 more glasses of water after I finished the first one. So, what's your deal? He asked, crossing his arms as he sat down in the seat in front of me. I just looked at him inquisitively. Are you alright? I mean, you look awful. Your clothes are ripped and you're dirty. Not to mention you smell really bad. I shrugged my shoulders. I woke up in a ditch like this. I just walked here. His eyes widened. A ditch? Are you okay? What's your name? I don't really know my name. I can't remember anything from since I woke up there. So you have amnesia. I've heard that people experience memory loss after suffering traumatic events and stuff, but no offense or anything, but you look like crap. None taken. I don't really know what happened, so I can't really be sure. If something traumatic happened, shouldn't it be best to not try and remember? I responded. He looked like he was about to say something, but a ding rang out from the kitchen. Oh, my cornbread is done, the boy said excitedly as he jumped up and ran to the kitchen. Completely forgetting about what he was saying, I watched as he took the dish out of the oven. He began to cut into it with a little smile on his face and returned with a small round dish with 2 blue circles lining it. It was filled with perfect golden brown squares of cornbread. Dig in, he said, throwing his hands up in the air. Don't mind if I do. I grabbed a piece and stuffed it into my mouth. It was still too hot, and I ended up huffling air like an idiot. I gulped the fluffy, delicious treat down my gullet and then took a big sip of water. My cheeks felt so hot as the boy laughed at me from across the table. So, what's your name? As I asked to change the subject. I took another piece and only chewed half of it before plopping in its other half. Sean Briggs, at your service, he said with a little bow. I chuckled and picked up a third piece and popped it into my mouth. Sean took one in two and ate it while staring at me. Well, I guess in the meantime, I'll call you Jane, he said suddenly. Why Jane? I asked. He answered with, it's a common name given to people who can't be identified. Jane Doe for girls and John Doe for boys. Jane Doe, I muttered to myself. I stuffed another crumbly piece of cornbread into my mouth, and my stomach was feeling very happy, and I felt okay. Not truly safe, but good enough. How do I know you're not going to hurt me or my parents? Sean asked, cautiously. How do I know your parents won't hurt me? I retorted. He let out a nervous chuckle. True, he said, crossing his arms again. He was leaning back in his chair. It looked like he was comfortable at the very least. I couldn't be sure if he was off guard, though. We had just met, after all. I guess we'll just have to trust one another, I said matter-of-factly, a hint of challenge in my voice. Yeah, I mean, a girl with amnesia can't be too dangerous, right? He let out a small smile. Where are your parents, anyway? I inquired. They're in town getting the car fixed. A bug ran into the middle of the road and they crashed into it. Messed up the car pretty badly, too, he explained. I said sympathetically. Dang. Hope they're alright. They're just a little banged up, nothing too major, he continued. I'm wondering what kind of rental car they'll pick. It must suck too, because I actually just bought that car last month. It let out a small, To be honest, with the warm food in my stomach and exhaustion, I was trying my best to stay awake, basically turning out of the conversation. I think he noticed because he stopped and took my hand. Come on, let's get you cleaned up before you pass out. My parents probably won't be home for a while anyway. I sleepily agreed and dragged my feet to where he led me into the bathroom. The warm water cascaded down my back and it felt amazing. Oh goodness, it felt amazing. The water pressure was just magnificent. As the water slowly turned from a dark brown back to clear and soapy suds lined my body, I felt a little more normal than before. When I got out and dried, Sean had left me a pair of underwear and a t-shirt, long black shorts. Of course, all of them were big on me. I stared into the mirror. The face looking back at me was unfamiliar. My wet, slick back hair went just past my shoulder blades. I had inviting, dark green eyes which matched beautifully with my hair, and I was insinuated with little brown spots speckled around my face. I hated what looked back at me. Even though I thought the face was attractive, I could see innocence in the face. But the eyes looked scared. Leaving the bathroom was my only option at that point. I walked down the hallway that led into the living room and found an open door. Seemed to be Sean's room. It was a nice size and had two windows, one adjacent to the door and one directly across. His bed was under the window and pushed against the wall. He had a dark brown blue comforter and a sky blue pillowcases which went nicely with his dark wood floors. He had a desk with some papers on it and a MacBook straight in the middle of it. He had no posters or anything lining the walls. He came out of his closet and noticed me in the other doorway. My parents would kill me if they knew I let someone in their house without them knowing. Farm folk tend to be overprotective here, since it's kind of isolated, so you'll have to sleep in my closet for now until I can figure out how to successfully let my parents let you stay, he said, clapping dust off of his hands. I nodded and made my way over to the closet. Underneath his clothes lay two pillows and a few blankets laying on top of one another. I'm hoping it'll be comfortable enough for you, he said, putting his hands behind his head. Thank you. It's not a problem. A tear kind of slipped from my eye just then. Thank you. Hey, what's wrong? He asked as more tears escaped from behind my eyelids. My situation sucks and you're such a nice person. You're the first one to help me and I just appreciate it so much. He grabs me and actually brings me into a tight hug. His chest was firm and I felt heat return into my cheeks. It's alright. You're safe here, okay? We'll figure out what happened and then you can go home. But for now, you're sticking with me. I wiped my face off and laid down in the closet. It was better than the cold, hard dirt I was laying in earlier. I closed the doors and let out a soft good night before falling into a deep sleep. It was blackness, a never-ending void. Then suddenly a burst of blinding bright white light. I sat up and I was met with a face full of hanging shirts. Light from the window shone through the closet doors and onto my face. I sighed and quickly got out of the closet. Sean's bed wasn't made and he wasn't in the room. The door was closed too. It was an eerily thick quiet. Something I felt I wasn't used to. Even last night, there was a choir of bugs and animals to entertain my ears. I searched around the room and found a note on his desk. It read, I had to go to school, but don't worry. We all leave together and then I ride my bike home from school. Since I am a senior, I can leave early, so I'm normally home around 1. Plus, my parents still come back for a few hours, so you should be okay. Eat, drink, and explore until I get home. Sean. I exited the room and relieved myself in the bathroom. I then walked around the house a little more. I found the master bedroom further down the hall. It was nice. The home was filled with beautiful furniture and expensive looking things, which is why I can understand they'd be very wary towards visitors. I found my way towards the kitchen and opened the fridge. After searching for the plates and cups, I sat at the table and ate some more of the cornbread and sipped some milk. I then returned to Sean's room and fixed his bed for him. I tidied the papers on his desk and gathered the laundry that littered the floor into a pile in the corner. Cleaning his room was the least I could do since he took me in. I wandered back into the living room and watched some television. The news was going on about how some people weren't able to leave town because of the mandatory construction. They put up a whole blockade and had officers guarding it to make sure people wouldn't leave. They even had tire spikes set up to stop any cars from barreling through. It was creepy. They were putting so much defenses up, but at the same time, people could go crazy when you tried to tell them what to do, especially since nobody could come in or out. There was only one road that came in and out of town, too. Feeling depressed after another hour of news and learning that a 9-year-old got shot and coincidence or... Feeling depressed after another hour of news and learning that a 9-year-old got shot. And a convenience store was robbed. And a kid died for $20 that he had on him. I turned the TV off and went on to go explore outside. The land was flat and full of corn and wheat. About 30 feet from the house was a barn and chicken hen. I went into the barn first and found 2 cows, a pig, and a horse. I let the horse sniff my hand and felt a warm air puff on my hand. It sent tingles down my spine. A bright smile was plastered on my face as I left to go see the chickens. Some were eating leftover kernels, while others were just playing and socializing. I saw a few of them sleeping inside in the little house area protecting their young. I then felt the urge to go play in the corn and frolic in the wheat. I felt the fat wax leaf of the corn tap my shoulder and sides as I ran pretending to run away from an alien. And I rolled around in the ticklish wheat and laughed until I couldn't anymore. I was having fun and I was at ease. I felt like a farm dog relaxing after a hot, long day. I saw Sean waiting for me by the back door as I returned from the wheat field. Having fun? He asked. I gave him a slight nod and a smile. I love your horse, I shout as I get closer. Oh, you mean peanut butter. She loves everyone. She's my favorite animal here too, he shouted back. Anyway, I'm going to make lunch if you want to shower and change. I nodded and followed him inside. I couldn't help but think about food the whole time I was in the shower. I was pretty hungry after all my frolicking. Sean had left me a modest pink dress and white lilies adorning it. It was pretty and it looked really good on me. When I entered the living room, a ham sandwich and some chips were calling my name. I devoured them and then chugged the choke Sean gave me. I was still pretty hungry, but I didn't want to be rude. It would also be suspicious if a large amount of food started going missing. I thanked Sean for lunch and we talked about his day. Nothing interesting happened at school except for a fight. We watched some TV, and when his parents came home, I went back into the closet. Sean gave me a book and a small flashlight. So I could read it while I stowed away in his wardrobe. A few hours passed, and Sean had brought me dinner, which consisted of pork chops, mashed potatoes, and green beans. I thanked him as I started to eat in my little hobbit hole. I grabbed the fork to start eating, but a searing white-hot pain caressed my hand as I touched it.
Ow!
I yelped. What's wrong? Sean said, coming back to the closet to check on me.
I think I'm allergic to this metal or something,
I told him. He said. Let me see if I can find something else. He then grabbed the silverware and left the room, and he came back a few moments later. Here, he said, giving me a plastic fork. I thanked him and ate my meal. I was pretty hungry from lunch, and boy, did this hit the spot. I eventually dozed off to sleep while Sean was playing on his phone. I was kind of jealous because my phone wasn't even on me when I woke up. While it would have also provided me with entertainment, it could have given me a lot of clues as to who I was and the kind of person I was. What happened to me? I kept thinking. Why can't I remember? My bladder woke me up. It was in the middle of the night and Sean was fast asleep. I tiptoed out of the bedroom and to the toilet. When I was done, a twinge of hunger ranged through my stomach. It had been a few hours since I last ate. I quietly made my way into the kitchen, my heart pumping. As I opened the fridge, I was hungry, but nothing looked good to eat in there. I had a craving for something, though. I just couldn't pinpoint what it was. I was surprised I was so hungry, actually. I was tiny, and the thought of me having a big appetite seemed ironic. Deciding on not eating anything, I figured I'd go for a walk to get some fresh air and soothe my thoughts. They had been racing since I went to bed. I've been consciously trying to pry past the wall that kept me from my memories. The walk was long and very calming. But my body suddenly tensed as a white light flashed into my eyes. The black void was back. The sudden light blinding. I couldn't breathe. My lungs burned. My legs ached. Pain and full aches riddled my body. I felt panic and anxiety flush through my veins. My heart skipping beats left and right. It was dark again. I was on the road. My shadow was illuminated by a light behind me. It was approaching fast. Really fast. I turned around and there was 2 lights. Headlights. I suddenly see the car barreling straight towards me. It didn't have enough time to dodge. I came back. Stars littered the sky as I looked up at them. My body was being shaken intensely. Jane? Jane! What's wrong? Talk to me! Sean whispered, yelled as his shoulder grasped mine. He was looking straight into my eyes. Worry settled him and panic in his face. My name, I said breathlessly, my gaze falling onto the ground. My name isn't Jane. My name is Brianna.